The subject that I really would like to talk about today is Asar B'Teves, but I would like to discuss a nekuda in the parsha, which I think is very important because I think that this subject is a subject we all struggle with to know what's really going on, and people just don't. I don't think that they have it. I don't think that they really have it exactly what's going on, and I'd like to discuss it with you. People go to be Menachem Ovel. They want to be Menachem Ovel, the person, and they look for what to say or what to not say, hide behind what else somebody else is saying. And what are you supposed to do when you're Menachem Ovel? So there's a Rashi in this week's Parsha, which I believe is very informative. And I'm sure many of you people have been in situations that you've lost a dear person in your life. And one is comforted when somebody comes to be Menachem Ovel. What is it that they're doing that makes you feel better? That's the subject. And if we could figure that out, then maybe we'll be able to do this mitzvah a little bit better. Anybody want to take a crack at it? I'm willing to hear, because probably whatever you say will also be true. So it's worthwhile to hear what other people have to say. I think we can all learn on this subject. Mel, you want to say something? You're off. You're not on. Your volume, what did you say?
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment. Okay. All right. Ruben, you want to say something?
Okay. You give the oval an opportunity to talk or not to talk.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I like that. That's a good answer to the question. I will just tell you from the Shiva calls which I've done in my life. There's a famous question, and there are many answers given to that question. This person really, I think, touched a important chord that has to do with Nichum Avelim, and I'd like to share it with you because it's a beautiful story. I have a friend of mine, two brothers actually, two friends of mine, that their father was a principal out of town in America. And he was a successful principal, and he went actually from one job to the next, moving up the ladder, so to speak. And his wife contracted cancer, and unfortunately, she died of cancer, and it was much speedier than they imagined. They just moved into a new community, and they were there for maybe a month, and his wife died. So yeah, it was in a place that nobody knew him. And definitely no one knew his wife, because when they came there already, she was sick. And his two children live here in Eretz Yisrael, so I assume that that's the reason why he decided to sit Shiva here in Eretz Yisrael with his two sons. And I was only there for one Shiva visit, but it was quite obvious to me that all the traffic, the people coming and going, were for his children. And here, this prominent individual in the society which he lives in was usually centerfold, and here he is, just a lump on a log, if you want to call it like that, so to speak. And I started to talk to him about different things, and I don't know how the subject came up about people being menachem him, and he said the thing that somebody said to me that was the greatest nechama was, what is the meaning that we say Hamokum Yenachem Eschem B'Soch Shavuot Yerushalayim? What are the words Hamokum, which refers to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Why do we use that terminology referring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And there are many answers given to that question. He said somebody came here and they offered a different explanation, and it actually brought me a nechama. There are people that are here and they look at me and really want to reach out and help me shoulder my burden, but they have nothing to say. But the fact that they're here in the room together with me, sharing my burden, that itself is a nechama. Hamokum yenachem eschem. The fact that we are here in this mokum, in this place, that causes a nechama. I think it's a very beautiful, beautiful thought, even though it's obviously that's not the Pashup Shot, far from the Pashup Shot. I'm not suggesting that that's what Chazal meant to say, but the idea is a very forceful idea. And I believe that part of many times when a person goes to be Menachem Avol, even though you said nothing, the fact that you are there is supportive. And sometimes, not only that, sometimes when you say something that actually end up saying the wrong thing. And I'll just mention, this is a little bit of a morbid kind of a subject, but I feel it's important. Out of all of my Nichum Avelim, the worst horror story that I know of is a friend of mine was marrying off his child, and the chasana was on the last day of Shiva. And there were all kinds of questions of what you could do or you can't do, mixayim kikulu, all kinds of questions. And this was being discussed at the Shiva. And one bright fellow, he pops up and he says, it's really a pity your mother didn't die a day earlier. It would have taken care of all these problems. And there was like a few people just were like, yikes, how do you get out of this? The Oval did not flinch. He didn't respond. And I can promise you that person, if you asked him if he ever said such a thing, he never noticed it. There was no response negatively from the Oval at all. And I think like, what a stupid thing to say is like, this makes it into the all-time greats, right? And I'm sure that the fellow who said it, he was trying to menachem him. But this illustrates sometimes a person's trying to menachem somebody, and you could say the most insensitive things without realizing what you're doing. So indeed, sometimes it's worthwhile not to say anything. But that's a interesting story. You could say, oh, that story is pretty horrible story if you ask me. But I'd like to share with you a Rashi. Yehuda goes to Yosef and he tells him, I think that it's really important that you let Binyamin off the hook. You let us go back because we have a frail old father back home. And if Binyamin doesn't come back, if I'm going to come back to my father, excuse me. So what does it mean? They are so attached that if I come back without him, my father will die. That's more or less what the pasuk says. My father will die. Says Rashi. Now, Yaakov says that Binyamin is around and I have him. I am comforted for the loss of his mother and his brother. And if he is going to die, it'll be like all three of them died in one fell swoop. How is he being misnachem? What does it mean? So now the last one went, so all the cards folded, or is there maybe some kind of a deeper meaning? This is, I would like to say over something from Revolva. I would like to remove this from the idea, which I believe is also true. There's a story about a fellow who was very rich and he had a set of dishes that he got as a Yerusha, and somebody broke the last dish and he was beside himself with grief. So someone says, you're such a rich man, you can buy whatever you want. Why are you grieving over a dish? He says, I have money to buy everything. They just don't make it anymore. Sometimes the last person goes, so it's the close of an era. So we really feel like, we lost it all. So on a simple level, I think that that's what Rashi is telling us, that as long as there was still a shred of, we'll call it base Leah, Rachel, so we're able to be comforted. But when the last one goes, so then there's nothing left. There's nothing left, and that's very sad. I believe that that's the Pashup Pshat. However, Avolba, he takes us to a different level. When you want to talk about the good old times, so you can't speak about it to somebody who's 10 years old, because they can't relate to the good old times. The person is misnachem, is a person that shares that experience with you, that you can live together with him on that plane. That's what a nechama is. A person who helps shoulder some of the burden by understanding where you are, what you came from, what you went through, and they can have sympathy and they can relate to that situation. That's when a nechama actually comes into place, because that person can feel your pain, so to speak, to a certain degree. And that feeling your pain to a certain degree, that lightens your personal burden. And that is an unbelievable nechama. So a person sometimes, even just by being there in the room, and you don't have anything to say, but you're showing that you're paying for the other person's pain. And when somebody tells you how that other person affected them, and they're also missing out on that connection, that loss. They also share that loss, so they're helping share your burden with you. That is a nechama. But when there's nobody to share the burden with, so then you have to bear it alone, and that's very, very lonely and difficult. So that's part of the idea of a nechama. And now I'd like to talk about Asar B'Teves, and we're going to come back to this idea of what a nechama is. Asar B'Teves, I think, is a very underrated fast day. I know that's like, there's not much competition out there, because Yom Kippur is obviously Yom Kippur, and Tisha B'Av is obviously Tisha B'Av, and Shavuos B'Tammuz is the beginning, is the opener of the 3 weeks, right? And Tainus Esther is Tainus Esther. Asar B'Teves is like this misfit that really belongs in the 3 weeks, in the dead of summer, and we have it in the dead of winter, and it's the beginning of what happened at the end and a half a year from now. So people are not really connected to the fast day at all. And that's really a shame. It's really a shame, because this fast day has, there are 3 things that happened that we are commemorating and dealing with on Asar B'Teves. One is the fact that broke the wall to get into Yerushalayim happened on that day. The second is, according to some, Ezra Sefer died. According to others, it's actually that the person who they celebrate in other religions, his birthday is coming soon. He was born on that day, and that was a treacherous thing for Klal Yisrael. And the third thing is that the Torah was translated into Greek. 3 totally different ideas in one fast day, and I believe that all of them are related. So I'd like to put them all together a little bit from different things which I've seen from different people, and maybe you will have a better understanding of what is really going on. When I was in Shiva Bacher, I asked Mara Shiva a question, and he was horrified by the question and gave me a very curt answer. And for about 25 years, I was very disturbed at his answer and his curt answer. And today I'm just as annoyed as he was with the question. So I guess we grow up a little bit as time goes by. But it's a good question, and it needs a good answer. What's so terrible about translating the Torah into Greek? Moshe Rabbeinu himself translated the Torah into the 70 languages, and Greek was one of them. So what's so terrible? It's been done before. Just because Salgoy asked you to do it, what's the big difference? That was a question which I asked Moshe Shila. If anybody would like to answer that question, I'm more than happy to take an answer. Stanley, you want to try? Turn on your thing. You have to turn on your volume. Stanley, you're not on. Even if you scream, we can't hear you. Okay, I can't. Stanley, you have to turn your volume on. You're
The
mute.
microphone. He has to unmute his microphone.
Unmute his microphone. Okay. Nope, not yet. Mrs. Letman, not yet. Okay. Anybody want to answer the question?
Oh, he's on now.
Oh, he's on. Okay, Stanley, now we're ready for you.
Well, I don't think I'm ready, but a shot in the dark, because Greece was the country, was the nation of philosophy, was anti-Torah, totally anti-Torah, and so and that particular language would be very inappropriate. Although it was the height of civilization, and the means by which Hashem would, for some future day, would introduce the Goyim to certain concepts. But at the time, Greece, the whole Greek was to deny just the idea of anything beyond what they could touch and feel and measure and weigh, and be beyond physicality. So it's just would seem grossly inappropriate, although understandable in an intellectual sense. In a spiritual sense, it would be very inappropriate, that particular language.
Okay, I would just
Yes.
like to. I like your answer. But I would like to respond with a observation that I heard from Ramosha Shapiro. The halacha is that a Sefer Torah that is written in any language other than Greek does not have Kedusha Sefer Torah. The only language which a Sefer Torah can be written in and it still has Kedusha Sefer Torah is Greek. And that halacha seems quite absurd because of exactly what you said. And that was the question that Ramosha Shapiro said. It seems to me that this is the language that's the antithesis, and yet at the same time, it's the only language that the Torah can be translated into. But this didn't answer the question, Bagadol, of what's the difference between Moshe translating it into Greece and the Greeks translating it into Greece. And so I'm going to share with you, Mel, you want to say something?
Yeah, I have an observation. When Moshe translated the Torah into Greek, he used his knowledge of what the language was to translate it correctly. When whoever was forced to translate the Torah into Greek, they had to be sure that they didn't say things that would be misinterpreted, and they had to change a few things, and that's the difference.
That's excellent. That's I believe that's true. That's true. There was some kind of a diversion from the real Torah in the translation. That could be that is enough to make it, as Chazal say, dark in the world for 3 days and equal to the day of the Eagle. I believe that's true, and I think that's part of the whole answer. I just want to expand on this a little bit to get it to a little bit of a clearer understanding. The Marashiva, his answer to me was, and this has a lot to do with what you said. There's a big difference. Moshe Rabbeinu was translating the Torah because we are translating it for them. When the Greeks are translating it, they're translating the Torah. Now notice there's a big difference. As my father, Areni Kaporos Mishkova, used to say, when I used to learn with him, so sometimes I would put my Gemara on an angle on the edge of the table and look at the Gemara. And my father would say, you put the Gemara down and you bend over to the Gemara. Who's supposed to go to who? The Gemara is supposed to go to you, or you're supposed to go to the Gemara? So when we are trying to take the Torah and translate it, just wait 1 second for the noise to subside. Okay, when we try to take the Torah and translate it, so then we are projecting our Torah view. When it's coming from the Greeks doing it, they're superimposing their culture on the Torah. It's something totally different. And I'm going to share with you my personal observation, which I say this over quite often, and I'm not going to tell you the end. I'll let you all think about it. I was speaking once someplace in public in Hebrew, and I wanted to say that adage, put your money where your mouth is. And I was trying to think, so how do you say that in Hebrew? Okay, Yechiel, you've been here for a long time. How do you say that in Hebrew?
I don't think you can say that in Hebrew.
That's correct. That's correct. Now, I will tell you all how you say it in Italian. Okay? Any Italians here? No Italians here. Okay, I'm going to tell you how you say it in Italian. I'll bet my mother's life on it. Any of you had an Italian neighbor? Anybody heard that expression before? Ellie, what does it mean?
That he's so certain of it that he's just showing his certainty in it.
So why is it that the American says, I'll bet my bottom dollar, and the Italian says, I'll bet my mother's life?
Priorities.
Because that shows you that the dollar is dear to the Americans and his mother is very dear to him.
Correct. So in other words, the expression is, I will wager the thing that's the most valuable to me on this point. Now, what is the most valuable thing differs from one culture to the other. In Italy, family is the premium. In America, the dollar is the premium. So you don't say it in Hebrew, I'll bet my bottom dollar on it. I am not going to tell you how you say it in Hebrew. You can figure it out yourself. Okay? Let you all think about it for a while. All right, anyways, but that's my personal observation. So now when you translate something to a different language, if you're coming from their vantage point, what you're doing is that you're taking the Torah and superimposing your ideas on it. Okay? And that's like how would you say, anybody here speak Yiddish? How would you say that svara is lichtig? How would you say that in Hebrew, in English? How would you say that?
Brilliant.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean, that's not what it means. It means that it's
you would say matok midvash.
Nope, that's not what it means. That's not what it means. When you say that it's lichtig, it means that it enlightens you, and you get an adrenaline flow, and you are brought to a higher level through it.
Right.
It
You
doesn't
say
exist.
Moiridik, but that's kind of Yiddish.
But Moiridik means that it's awesome. That's what Moiridik means. It's a different emotion that we're talking about. And
Hebrew, they
each
use
one,
Malik.
I would like to say, I would like to challenge anybody over here. How do you say in Lashon HaKodesh, yes?
Yes,
No, yes, in Lashon HaKodesh.
that's yes.
No.
I don't know. That's what the kids do.
You know what? Am I talking to kids now? I ask you, how do you say it in Lashon HaKodesh? I don't think there is an expression like that in Lashon HaKodesh. It's an un-Jewish thought. It doesn't exist. I came, I saw, I conquered doesn't sound very Jewish to me.
You're talking about Lashon Kodesh rather than Hebrew, modern Hebrew, you mean?
Okay, that's the reason why I said Lashon HaKodesh.
Okay.
The word in Hebrew for fun doesn't exist. It's Arabic.
They make up a word, case or something like that. What is
Yeah,
that?
they didn't make it up.
Arabic.
It's Arabic.
Uh-huh.
Because it doesn't exist. It's not a Jewish idea. Just like the word chutzpah in English. Chutzpah doesn't exist in English. It's a Jewish concept. Aren't we proud? So these are just giving you examples. These are cultural words that cannot be translated because it doesn't exist in the other language. That's a whole different thing. So when you take the Torah and you translate it into a different language, then you have perverted the Torah. And sometimes it's necessary, and this is what's really very important, sometimes it's necessary to learn the Torah in your language so that you should be able to have an understanding of what it is. And then you hopefully will grow and be able to learn it back into the original language and get the full meaning. Anybody who has ever read something which was translated, even by the best of translators, and then you read it in the original, it's not the same thing. It's just not the same thing. And not only that, I'll tell you this from public speaking. When I say the same thing in Hebrew and I say it in English, I don't say the same thing. Just check out the Parsha sheet and you'll see, even though the translation isn't exactly mine, but the bottom line, it's just not the same because you're starting off in a different reality. There's the reality of Torah. When we have the Torah translated and a person thinks that he has the Torah, that is a disaster. All that he has is a step stool to get there to be able to understand what the Torah means. And this is a famous subject which was discussed in 250 years ago when they wanted to have the tefillas be in the local language and they wanted to translate it. All these translations, they cannot give the full impact, understanding of what it is for real. Some Sofer writes about this in a Tshuva extensively, how all the Sodas HaTorah can be all packed into one when you have it in the original, and when it's translated, you just can't do that. You have to have one or the other. I'll just give you an example. All of you today said Mizmor L'Soida. There's a Korean Ksiv in Mizmor L'Soida, which is fascinating. I don't know if you people down with the Siddur that has the Korean Ksiv. V'loi. And which one is the right one?
With the Vav.
Both right.
That's correct. They're both right. And it means two different things. But you say it one way And it means both things. You can't say, when you say it, you can't tell if you're saying Eloi with a Vav or Eloi with an Aleph. And because that's the point. And the Torah is full of these kind of things. You translate it, you've lost it. So that's one thing. There's another thing. The world, and this is an amazing thing, the world before the Greeks and after the Greeks took a great change. Before the Greeks, there were idols, and after the Greeks, there was culture. That means before the Greeks, everything was spiritual. There was always a God. Just question which God you're talking about, so to speak. But they all were mutations, really, of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And afterwards, there's just Gashmias. There's a whole different thing. You know, you speak to somebody to say, and you want to speak about a guy, I say, I don't have time for him. We live in a world that it doesn't exist. The wall was broken. How was the wall broken? The Medrash tells us that there was a guy that they used to have a catapult over these big rocks, and the guy would stand on top of the wall and catch them and throw them back. Well, Nisim. And then when the time came, so he lost his luster for whatever reason, the guy getting involved in that, and the Nisim stopped happening, and we fell into the world of Teva. No more Beis Hamikdash when the Greeks came to power is exactly the same year. Chazal tell us that Nevuah stopped happening. Our connection to Hashem could only be on Zoom. Our connection to Hashem lost the direct connection. That's what happened. Okay, this is an amazing thing. So the world changed. We broke down the spirituality, and that is an unbelievable churban. We broke down the Torah. That's an unbelievable churban. And this is the same idea of either the birth of that person, or according to some, it's the day that Ezra Sefer died. And Ezra Sefer was also the Sefer who he gave us the Torah the way we had it. All those things are wonderful things to understand a turn of events that happened. This turn of events did not have to happen. It started, but it could have been changed. And the Chassam Sofer says something which is amazing. The Beis Yosef brings in Abu Draum, that Abu Draum says that if Asara B'Teves would fall out on Shabbos, we would fast on Shabbos, as opposed to all other fast days except for Yom Kippur, because the Navi says Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh, just like it says about Yom Kippur. And the Chassam Sofer tells us the reason why you would fast on Asara B'Teves as opposed to all the other fast days is because if a person has a dream on Shabbos, you fast on Shabbos. Why is that? Because there's an urgency, because it has to do with something that's going to happen. So fasts that are negea to the future, one fasts on Shabbos. Says the Chassam Sofer, on Asara B'Teves is the day that every year we are judged. It will be another churban on Tisha B'Av. And therefore we fast because it's a future tzom. So the future tzom that we have today is a future tzom that has to do with what's going to be. It's a future tzom that's going to have to do with how much Torah we're going to have in the natural, how much of Beis Hamikdash we're going to have, and how much we are going to be able to relate to that which we're supposed to do. That's what this fast day is about. That's what this fast day is about. The The nechama, in my opinion, is that we're given today a chance. We can turn it around. This is the shortest fast, but in a sense, maybe the most powerful one. Because today, it's here and it's in our hands. Tomorrow night, when we make Kiddush, it's going to be after it was given. So there's a nechama of the Chorban today, because we can turn it around tonight. How do we turn it around tonight? It's already Asara B'Teves, and we have the ability to keep all three of them. We have the ability to turn around the Chorban of the Beis Hamikdash, the Chorban of Yavan, the Chorban of other religions, the Chorban of not having the Torah as a Sefer. We have that ability today. So we should be misnachem that we have an opportunity. I'll just end off on a little bit of a happier note. When I was a Bocher Yeshiva, I was singing in the Beis Medrash, and I was singing to myself, Mitzvah Gedel Lios B'Simcha. And some, call him like a sourpuss guy, comes over to me and says, where does it say that? So I already knew I was in for a confrontation. So I said, doesn't Rav Nachman say that? So that basically, that just took care of the whole, there's not much to fight about at this point, right? And then I went from the defensive to the offensive. I said, if I'm not mistaken, it's a Mishnah, and it's a pasuk in the Torah. Now this guy wasn't going to go down without a count. So he tells me, are you so sure that you're serving Hashem that you could be b'simcha? And I countered him, no, I'm not. But I'm just happy that I have the opportunity and the chance. Whether I'll be successful or not, I don't know. The nechama that I'd like to share with you today is that we have the ability to turn it around. May we be zeicha that this year we'd be judged favorably on this day, and the kais of Kiddush that we make should a mitzvah Hashem be B'Yishalayim HaPenuya. Have a good Shabbos.
Amen. Shkoyach.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Amen.
Okay.
Shabbos.
Good
Good
Shabbos.
Shabbos.